This chapter is the nuts and bolts part of rule number 1, how to actually get the numbers that tell you whether a company is predictable and worth owning. Phil calls those numbers the Big Five, the growth rates for sales, EPS, equity, book value, free cash, and the single most important percentage, ROIC. If those numbers are consistent and healthy, the business is probably protected by a moat and can be valued. If not, walk away. Start with the raw data. For each company you're studying, you want roughly 10 years of sales, revenue, EPS, earnings per share, equity book value per share, free cash flow, cash left after CapEx, ROIC. This is usually shown as return on capital on finance sites. First, look for consistency. Put the numbers in a column and ask, do they trend up steadily or do they bounce around? Predictability is essential. Garmin, for example, showed steady, rising sales and EPS over a decade. GM's numbers bounced all over and looked flatlined. That difference alone tells you Garmin is predictable. GM is not. How to turn raw numbers into growth rates. The Rule of 72 trick. Phil teaches a quick, intuitive way to estimate average annual growth without a spreadsheet. Count doubles and use the Rule of 72. Example: if sales went from roughly 100 to 800 in 9 years, that's about 3 doubles. 100 to 200 to 400 to 800. 3 doubles in 9 years is 1 double every 3 years. Use 72 divided by years per double. 72 divided by 3 is 24%, which equals the annual growth rate. It's not perfect, but it's a very useful, quick estimate that gets you in the right ballpark without fuss. He uses the same method to estimate EPS, equity, and cash growth. Rule number 1's bar is simple. Each of the Big Five growth rates should average at least 10% per year over a long period. 10 years is ideal. Also compare 10-year, 5-year, and 1-year rates. You want numbers that aren't sliding downward. Phil ranks the growth rates by importance. 1. Equity. Book value growth. Most important. 2. EPS growth. 3. Sales or gross profit growth. 4. Free cash growth. Least important of the 4, though still relevant. ROIC gets top billing. A company should return at least 10% on invested capital, and, ideally, that number should be stable or rising. ROIC tells you whether management is good at turning capital into real profit. It's a strong signal of moat and of managerial competence. Debt is an afterthought, but don't ignore it. Phil doesn't make debt a core Big Five field, but he gives a practical rule. Divide long-term debt by current free cash flow. If it takes more than 3 years of free cash flow to pay off long-term debt, the company is carrying too much risk for rule number 1. Zero debt is perfect, but manageable debt is acceptable if it can be retired quickly from free cash. Free sites like MSN Money and Yahoo Finance will give you many of these raw figures, and sometimes 5-year growth rates. Professional services give more organized 10-year data but cost money. You can do the math in Excel, use online calculators, or apply the Rule of 72 in your head. All work. Phil also notes he provides Rule number 1 calculators to speed the process. A caution: past numbers aren't a promise. Even great historical Big Five numbers can stop. A company can run out of customers, see its moat breached, or be disrupted. That's why the 4 M's matter. Meaning, do you understand and want to own the business? Moat, is it defendable? Management, can the people running it be trusted? And margin of safety, are you buying at a significant discount? Good past numbers are necessary but not sufficient. You must combine them with understanding the business and management. And remember, dividends don't automatically make or break a Rule number 1 decision. What matters is whether management can reinvest cash profitably. If not, a dividend is fine. If they're paying dividends instead of funding growth that would give higher ROIC, that's a red flag. Also remember the tax impact. Dividends are taxed twice in the United States, so it's not automatically preferable. That's Chapter 6 in a nutshell. How to turn financial statements into the meaningful signals you need to decide whether a company is predictable, whether its moat is real, and whether it deserves a place on your watch list, or whether you should pass and look for something better. Next up, the people who run the business, management, because good numbers need good stewards.